How you fellas doing?
Oh, we're doing good, Daniel. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Man, it's going to be a big time in Marysville tonight. What can folks expect if they've never seen the Appalachian Road Show on stage before?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, we like to think of it as a high energy show that talks about, we tell stories and sing songs about Appalachia and how the music kind of came together from its origins, from people coming over from overseas and settling this country all the way into the modern age, and how it's still growing now. So that's kind of what we're doing.
That's one thing that's so fun about y'all's show is not only do you have the high energy and the great music, but you do work in a lot of the history and the storytelling and the heritage and the culture of Appalachian music and its people, which is just fascinating.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's we have a little mission statement we do up front, and then we kind of tell stories. Darrell talks about his dad being a coal miner, and I talk about my family. It's stuff that's close to home for us. Right now that's kind of how the show goes. We have a new show we're working up, and it has several more points. We get into the Civil War era of music and living both. On the show that we're going to be doing this summer. So it's a very interesting show if I have to say so myself. But it's sure not me. These boys are top notch.
It's fun too because not only are you guys bringing out songs from the past, but you guys are bringing new songs too that incorporate that story and that heritage, which is really great to show how alive that history is today.
Well, we try to, and that song, Jim Van Cleve and myself wrote that one going down the road. I can't remember. I've got it on my phone actually where we were at. The hour or so stretch where we were at, but Jimmy had the idea, and we want to write some of our own material. Jim of course writes most of the instrumentals we do, and then we wrote that one, and I think we wrote the song that sounds kind of like Flat and Scrubs. What's it called, Darrell?
Tonight
I'll see you in my dreams.
Yeah.
We write a few along that just try to keep up with the history and the heritage of the music, especially if we have a certain feel we're looking for that we want people to grasp and understand what we're trying to do. So.
Now, who all is the Appalachian Road Show for folks that maybe haven't seen y'all on stage before?
Well, it's been since the beginning. Now, we do alternate bass players occasionally. Todd gets busy sometimes, and of course during COVID it was tough. He's 71 years old and he's got 2 little kids. So
he's got his hands full.
He's got his hands full. But it's myself. My name's Barry Abernathy, and I play the banjo and do part of the vocals and help with the MC work. Darrell Webb here, my partner in crime. He's a longtime bluegrass professional, and he plays a little bit of everything, sings a little bit of everything, sings a lot of everything. Not well, he says. And then Jim Van Cleve, he plays fiddle and helps run the business, and a mastermind of our kind of music, in my opinion. And I've been playing music with Jim since he was 18 years old. If that tells you anything, and I think he's mid to upper 40s now. So if that tells you anything, it's been a long time. So we kind of read each other's mind. And in my opinion, there's a lot of great guitar players out there, but the one that fits us the most is a young man named Zeb Snyder. We affectionately call him Lon. His name's Zebulon Snyder, so we call him Lon.
Sounds like some sort of Greek god or something.
Yeah,
right?
There's all kind of nicknames. We tell him, he said the other day, Camellia Lon, Lonzanita.
There ain't many
Lonzilla.
There ain't many folks in the mountains named Zebulon.
No.
You can't spell that.
Zeb is we've said this since the beginning. He must have been like that when he was 8 or 9 years old. He's an old soul. He's like an old man in a young man's body. I love him.
A town the other day called Zebulon.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, I love to play music with Zeb. He's another part of the creation of this thing. He was in from the beginning, and he's just grown in it. And now he's of course he's a great teacher. And the last record, this new record we got coming out here in a couple months, it is a lot of the material is Zeb's material that he brought to the band. So it's going to be a fresh take on Appalachia. So
fantastic.
The Lawn record.
Yeah, the Lawn album.
Now D. Webb, Barry mentioned that your daddy was a coal miner. How did that impact you growing up? 'Cause that's something that, in a lot of parts of the world and a lot of parts of the country, that seems really foreign and exotic to a lot of folks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that come to shows. I mean, we do that thing where I tell that story, and I mean, people get really, really emotional over it, and I get emotional on stage, and people ask me all the time if that's real or if that's just part of the show. And I say, no, that's real. That's the way I grew up. Where I grew up, it was either coal mining industry or you was drawing a check every third of the month. And so, but it was a hard way to make a living where I grew up. And a lot of my family, like I tell this all the time to my wife, right now, her dad was my dad's boss in the mines when they worked together, yeah. And he was in a real bad mining accident years ago, and then where my dad worked, they had like what they call coal tipple, and the tipple fell and killed about 25, 30 people when I was probably 10 or 11 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so. Oh yeah, they're all real. And after I turned about 12 or 13 years old, my dad retired from the mine and got on disability, and that's when he started, getting after me to play music.
Yeah.
But I've been singing probably ever since I was 4 or 5 years old. But yeah, it was the only way to make a living in West Virginia was working the coal mine. That's all we had.
Being around that community and that sort of upbringing, how does that impact the music from the area that you're from, including the music that you make?
Oh, it has a big impact on it. I mean, there's millions and millions of songs written about, where I grew up, and
we just listened to one last night that
we did, yeah.
It was a newer song written about coal mines that we're going to try to record on our next record. And Darrell I just played it for him last night, and it's a newer song, but it's going to be a great song. Like I said, we get pitched a lot of them too about coal mines. It's a huge part of Appalachia. I mean, and that whole the Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia area, that whole area is coal mines or nothing, and it has been for years. And so we always want to make sure we cover that. We like to cover Civil War stuff and the brother against brother things, and family against family, how that affected those things, and our whole repertoire kind of is about all that. And somebody said, how long are y'all going to be able to carry this out and do songs about Appalachian? I said, well, there's a lot of them, man.
There's plenty to go around.
Yeah.
And we write them, and it's not, we don't bind ourselves just to what we have done in the past. Our first couple of records especially had a lot of spoken word stuff on them. And, you don't want to sit every time you listen to a project and listen to all the spoken word stuff, but we felt it's necessary and part of who we are to kind of set up the story for the next couple of songs and stuff. And that's kind of what we do on stage. Mm-hmm. This particular record doesn't have any spoken word right now. Don't know for sure if we're going to or not. We're not bound and pigeonholed into one thing, but at the same time, it is good for people to understand where the stories are coming from. I remember when I was playing with Doyle Lawson, the songs that had the most effect on people live was when he would tell a story about how a song came about and how he came about wanting to do it. The one song that we did with him, I grew up with a song, I know you have an old red church hymnal called The Lifeboat. Mm-hmm. And I think it was number 308 or something like that in the church hymnal, 306, something like that. Anyway, we got singing that one, and Doyle said he could remember being working in the field with his dad beside the Clinch River, and the loggers were taking the logs down to a town. They would float them down the river, and he can remember them singing The Lifeboat coming as they were going down the river while he was hoeing corn. And
wow.
And that people would always come up and ask for that song because of that. A lot of times they won't remember a song, but they'll remember the meaning behind it.
The story about it. Yeah.
The context.
Yes.
It was presented in.
Yeah.
Was seeing how audiences responded to narrative in setting up, some songs, like when you were with Quicksilver, like you just mentioned. Yeah. Is that part of the drive or the impetus behind the way you guys structure your albums and your show, which is very unique? It's different than your typical bluegrass band where everything is really kind of planned out and it's all for a purpose and kind of flows with your presentation.
It is. We do have some areas where we jam and where we get loose and free, but it'll be in a segment that's kind of covered. We've already covered the subject, or whatever. Yeah. So, but to clarify for people that haven't seen us before, I think we started all this talking about what can people expect to see at Marysville. Yeah. So it's not a storytelling session. So sometimes we'll talk to some of these big festivals and they'll say, well, we just don't know if it'd fit here or not. And what they don't understand is there's music going on behind it, and the narrative is really quick and to the point. Yeah. It's precise and to the point. It's not
a history lesson.
It's not somebody. It's not a history lesson. It's not somebody standing up there telling their life story at one time like I'm doing right now. But it's it's quick and precise and to the point, and the show is musical. It's energetic, and there's a lot of spontaneous music going on. These guys are, Zeb and Jim and Todd, all three of those guys they thrive off of spontaneity. So it's and playing off of one another. That's a real cool thing to watch. That they won't play the same thing 2 nights in a row. So.
That's true.
Which can be surprising sometimes, but that's the way music's supposed to be. It's supposed to be emotional from the heart, and what is coming out, what your mood and feeling is at that time. That's what music is all about, Which is different from the way I came up with Quicksilver, and you learned the record, and you learned it exactly like the record, and you played it that way every time. And I love that style too, but I also love if somebody's competent, they listen to what's going on around them and they feed and play off of that, and that's a special thing in itself too. So we have some elements of both here.
You mentioned your time with Dual Austin and Quicksilver. You both have spent decades playing with top bands in the business. What are some lessons that you've taken from folks that you've worked with in the past, or bands that you've been a part of that you have applied to the Appalachian Road Show?
Well, that lesson there's one that I was telling you about, and we were listening. The lesson with Doyle was, I want this music to sound like my records. I want it to be as close to that as possible. Take the stuff, study it, understand where I'm at. If I'm playing here, he'd say, if I'm playing here and you don't feel like that's the spot, it's still the spot. This is where I want this song at. I've been in this business a long time. It wasn't being a smart aleck about it. He just wanted the music where he felt it that day. And if he changed keys, if Doyle changed keys in the song, he would hit a key, and the lick he would hit on the mandolin. He never ever said it. But you learned over the course of a few months, you learned where he was going and what song he was going to be doing. It was amazing.
His kind of subtle way of tipping his hand
while he was emceeing, he would tip his hand a little. When we were listening to J.D. Crowe last night, and we were listening to some live shows where Darrell played with him, like at Winter Hawk and stuff like that, and he was telling some Crowe stories about, one thing was not screaming.
Oh, yeah. When I played with J.D., he never did ask me to come try out. So he asked me, he said, do you want to come to Richmond and pick? I said, yeah, I'll come down and pick for a little while. And I was living here in Ohio. And I went down and we kicked off, I think it might have been Somehow Tonight. And I started singing real loud, because I thought I had to then, me being, 20 years old. And J.D. looks at me and he says, son, he said, we don't holler in this band. He said, we sing. We don't holler in this band.
That's great.
But that's one thing I took from him, And another thing with him was, stuff like My Home Ain't in the Hall of Fame, or what's the other song? God's Own Singer was a big one. So he'd kick that thing off. And he'd say, now don't drag down. He's like, you keep that thing up the whole time,
Even though it was a slow song.
Yeah, even though it was a slow song. He wanted it to feel like it was running away all the time. But, yeah, that's a couple of things I learned from him, but I learned a lot from playing with J.D. Yeah, we don't holler in this band.
We don't holler in this band. That's fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of singing and not hollering as the Appalachian Road Show takes the stage tonight. Marysville, Ohio, part of the Marysville Winter Bluegrass Series. Learn more at marysvillewinterbluegrass.com. Doors open at 6:30. Showtime 7 o'clock. Wonderfully hospitable team that will be hosting both the band and the guests at the Marysville Winter Bluegrass Series tonight. So the Burnside Family Life Center, South Court Street, downtown Marysville. It's hosted by Cornerstone Global Methodist Church. So marysvillewinterbluegrass.com. It's going to be a lot of fun.